We thank Yisrael Ne'eman for coming to talk to us. Jerry Springer Show.
That's it.
Yisrael Ne'eman is an historian and a political analyst focusing on the development of the Israeli state and the Arab-Muslim Middle East. He received a BA in Middle Eastern Studies from Rutgers University and completed an MA in Modern Jewish History at the University of Haifa. His areas of specialization include the Middle East conflict, and in particular issues of jihad and the history of the Jewish people of Israel. Yisrael made Aliyah from the U.S. in 1977 and initially lived in Kibbutz El Rom in the Golan Heights. Remember that, Monty? El Rom? Yes. Drafted in 1978, he served as a combat medic in the IDF until 1980 and continued his reserve service until 2001. During this period, he served in Lebanon 6 times in the 1980s. He received his national tour guide license in 1992 and worked extensively on academic touring programs. Yisrael began teaching Israel and the Middle East related courses at the University of Haifa International School in 1991 and at the Technion International School in 2010. As a member of the Eshkar community in the Central Galilee, Yisrael served for 12 years on the local council, 10 of them as chairman. We look right at you out of our back door. We know everything you're doing. During this period, he was involved in community projects and expansion, including the absorption of over 100 families. Yisrael was instrumental in achieving an agreed-upon border with Arab al-Naim Bedouin community with whom Eshkar shares their Galilean hilltop. Over the years, Yisrael has given lectures and seminars abroad, in particular focusing on Arab-Israeli relations and the rise of jihadi fundamentalism in the Middle East. He has published his first book, Hamas Jihad, Anti-Semitism, Islamic World Conquest, and Manipulation of Palestinian Nationalism, in 2016. Info can be accessed from his website. We can give you the information later because none of you will ever remember it. And we can actually send it out on the Facebook page. The table of contents and introduction, which will also be there. Yisrael is married. I believe his wife is here. Married with 4 children. Okay, so I will turn this over to Yisrael, and it's all yours.
All right. Mark, thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the English Speakers Club for having me. It's a pleasure. Okay, I see many people who have also had the great honor of being in class with and having discussions, and we don't just learn, we have a good time. I hope everybody would agree with that. We have a few sometimes for people our age, we sometimes have rancorous discussions, but that's good, right? Because we're all trying to save the Jewish people or something along those lines. Okay, so without any further ado, okay, what we're going to do today is I was asked to go over several topics, okay? When I spoke about Mark originally, what did he say? He said, well, you know, like sort of like an update, the last class that I gave in a series of lectures that I did through Nefesh B'Nefesh concerning the history of Israel, and said, okay, let's take it there, but let's see what we can see in the future also, because Israel's at 70. Okay, and one of the first things that I really want to say here is that for Israel to be at 70, look, we remember better, but we still don't remember well enough. Okay? How should we put it? How the world saw Israel and the establishment of the Jewish state in 1948, and the question would be, would the state survive? Okay? And when you think about what we had in the Middle East in those days, it was really considered a fluke that we won the 48 war. It was. Not only that, State Department, Department of Defense, the United States, and all the intelligence organizations around the world really didn't expect we'd survive it. Or if we did, the state would collapse shortly afterwards. It's been a long 70 years in many cases, but the truth of the matter is, and I thought about it today, so what's our greatest success? You know, we're going to talk about things here, in particular the economy and gathering in the exiles, as we say, kibbutz. Karmiel. But you know what the greatest success is? If I take the 70 years before the State of Israel, go from 1878 to 1948, right, and compare safety and physical security of Jews around the world in that period of time, where some 7 million Jews were killed, and possibly more, because we don't know how many Stalin killed out in Siberia, in the camps there. And we take the period from 1948 to 2018, it's not to say nothing happened to any Jews, but we look at it, right, in the State of Israel, wars and terrorist attacks and all those horrible things we read about, you know what, 25,000, not that anybody should take that lightly. And if we talk about the rest of the Jewish world and things that happen, once again, we have to go to the Soviet Union of the late 40s, early 50s. There's still a Gulag archipelago. So you know what? If the number goes up to 70,000, I would hope not, but maybe it does, it's 1%. And that's what the State of Israel has done more than anything else, right? All of our arguments back and forth and left and right, religious and secular, okay? Put it all aside. Remember, we're here. That was something that up till 48 wasn't really clear that a Jew would survive. Okay, that being said, I was asked to go into several of the issues that we face today, okay? And to discuss them, right? To take a look and to go into it. So let's take a look first of all, okay? When we deal with the big issue nowadays, one of them is Haredim, right? The ultra-Orthodox in Israel. Where are they going? Do they fit into the community? How do we bring them in? And there's a lot of material being written on it, a tremendous amount, okay? And as we know, this is a community that did not particularly favor the establishment of the State of Israel. They believed that the state would only come about in a messianic end time, okay? Until the criteria for that messianic end time, until they're met, we are in exile. Even if we live in the state, you're in exile, but, or I should say, live in the land of Israel. You're in exile here, you should not declare a state. And luckily, Ben-Gurion, when we go back, it's a good trifle of the background, he, in 1948, he exempted, of course, 400 yeshiva students in an agreement with Rabbi Zalman Kahana, okay? And he said, they study. They're not to wander around the street. They're not to do whatever they want. They study. And Rabbi Kahana and the others with him said, for sure, they're going to do exactly what they're supposed to. And that means study, pray, whatever. Okay. On the other hand, people always ask, what did the ultra-Orthodox or Haredim do for the state? And the answer actually is an interesting one. When the UN, UNSCOP, right, their commission came to see what's going on here, should there be a one-state or two-state solution in 1947, right? Until that was declared, right, the partition plan. So what they, Ben-Gurion, he's interviewed others. We said we need a Jewish state. The Arabs were against it. And it wasn't clear what the ultra-Orthodox would do, the Haredim. And what they did, essentially, was not be against it. And they spoke positively about the development. Okay? And it's something that's very forgotten in history. Okay? Now, from there to where we are today, of course, a lot of things have taken place. So let's take it, where are we today and what happened? Going through up till 1977, the situation when labor was in power remained pretty stable. The ultra-Orthodox did not have so many children as we know today. The average is 6.5 children a family. A decade ago it was 7.5. Right? That was the average. It was more like 3.5, 4 maximum. And people worked. When Menachem Begin came to power in 1977, so there were coalition deals, and we know we have coalitions here. There were coalition deals. There were coalition deals. And they were brought in, and the numbers went way up. Okay? The numbers went way up. And the question was, why and what will be done? When they go that far up, it started to be, right, the state's paying for them to study in yeshivas. Fine, but how many? And that was the big question. How many? Okay, proportionally, if there were 448, so now you're in, let's say, 1988. So it could be several thousand. But the numbers today are about 110,000, okay, that are being supported by the state. So People are asking, wait a minute, and this has gone on for a while, where is the input in the economy? Where is the issue of serving in the military? Because we know there's a whole debate about it, and most of the rabbis, not all, you have some Hardalim, as they're called, Haredi, Lumi, or national ultra-Orthodox rabbis, who are Zionists, who want their students to serve, but there aren't many. And most say, no, they're going to study, they're not going to the army. Of course, we know this is one of the issues that annoys a lot of people. It says, wait a minute, shouldn't there be an equality here of what needs to be done? Well, over the years, what's set in? Economic factors more than anything else, if I cut to the chase. Because it's very, actually say, it's always called, quote, very sexy issue to argue or discuss the whole issue about military service, but the real issue is, what about an education? What about a modern education? Because an education that you haven't studied Gemara, for sure. Studying Torah, for sure. Okay, but what about what we call the core topics? Right? By the way, correct modern Hebrew, English, math, and science. Today, you don't really get very far without that. Okay? At the end of the 90s and towards the early 2000s, you had somewhere around 30% of adult males working in the ultra-Orthodox community. Yet the economy was doing quite well. It could hold them up. You remember what happened from 2000 to 2004 or 5, right? It's what's called the Second Intifada. I call it a low-intensity conflict. That forced a lot of people into the job market. But in the aftermath, there was a sliding back once the economy picked up again. And in the last 10 years, the Israeli economy has grown by 3 to 5% a year, at least. Sometimes a bit more per year. So an average of about 4%. It's been amazing. Okay? And there's enough money out there to support it. But when we look down the road, we see that there's a problem. Also within the communities. Because the class gap is growing. All right? And the average salary in the country has gone up. And the ultra-Orthodox population has only in the last few years begun to really join the labor force. Now, the women have always joined more than the men, because women's studies had more secular learning, which was considered in a way what's called bitul Torah. In other words, that you're not studying Torah. But the question always is, how do you fit into the economy? Is everything a matter of, right, you know, just the issues of faith and whatnot? Or do you have to have a physical part of this, meaning that you're building a state physically? Okay, so where does it stand today? As of around 2013-14, okay, you have more intensified investigations into what is happening, more soul searching within the community, and today you have somewhere around 50% of adult males of working age that are working, right? Meaning that it's gone up. But the question comes up as the quality of the job that people have. Because you need to get an education. If you're studying, and say not going to the army, right? Very few do. You're studying into your 20s or even your early 30s, so how far are you going to get? Okay? How far are you going to get when you need to have a job? All right? And that has left them, right, in a distinct disadvantage. Today, there is a blowback from within the community of rebuilding, all right, and to study, especially amongst the women. And we know that there's a crisis inside the Shas movement over this issue. Okay? Because the rabbi that replaced the Levi Yosef, right, Shalom Cohen, he is against women going into the workforce. He wants them to stay at home. He wants to keep a very conservative framework. And on the other hand, women like Rabbi Avad Yosef's oldest daughter, she is very much in favor of women and the men getting an education and, of course, being Torah knowledgeable. Okay? So, that's one. Did I start with this as one of the major issues? Because it's the highest birth rate in the Jewish sector. They have 4% growth per year. The rest of the Jewish sector is 1%. And when they did population projection up to around 2060, we find that if we continue with the current trends, 37% of the Jewish population will be ultra-Orthodox. Okay, now, that doesn't mean there aren't people that drop out. or become modern Orthodox or whatever else. Okay, but it's one of the biggest challenges. It's an enormous challenge, and Karmiel Flug, the governor of the Bank of Israel, she has said this is a major issue. Because you have to look down the road. We can't just look, to the end of our noses, as we say, and say it's okay. Look to the next election. It needs to be dealt with and dealt with now, and that's education. Hence, you notice that this whole week, there's big arguments over drafting Haredim into the army. Yes, no, how to do it, how much to do it, should they be able to get a job if they don't go to the army, right? Because there were all sorts of laws about whether you can be gainfully employed or not. If you had this deferment, then you have to stay in the yeshiva till your 30s. By then, with 4 or 5 children, how do you enter the workforce? And therefore, there's a rolling back of that policy also, because they're saying this doesn't work. Okay, in other words, so like, if you want to say that there are, quote, punishments, it's punishing all of us. Okay, because we're going to go further down the road, it's not going to happen. So what we find is that many of the secular politicians, including Yesh Atid, right, which is the one that's the most vociferous about what goes on with the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, that they also are said that they quite possibly will support this bill going before the Knesset today. Okay, we will see exactly what will happen, okay, and we'll see how it follows through. Actually, I think the bill, it was the last night, maybe even, I think it actually passed, right? So, we'll see how it's implemented. And by the way, each government changes the bill. Every time, the laws change. Okay, now, the next issue, okay? And I'm going to get back and try to tie this together. Israeli Arabs. Where are they? First of all, Israeli Arabs is a really bad term, because they're Arabic speakers. But if you go to the average Druze, they'll probably tell you, okay, maybe you have Arab background, I speak Arabic, but I really see myself first as Druze. Okay? I'm first Druze. They serve in the army. As a matter of fact, statistics, 96% of the Druze have a positive view of the state. Okay? So you'll say, okay, so what are the other groups? Well, you have Christians, who are 10% of the Arabic-speaking population. And the Christians, at one time, really were the leaders of the secular Arab nationalist movement. After 2011 and onwards, and we saw what happens and what's happening to Christians throughout the Middle East, and it's been going on for a long time, it's sort of been a blind eye in that direction. But in 2011, what's called the Arab Spring, or I call it Islamic Awakening, that's changed a lot of minds. Today, the Christian population, somewhere around 60%, have a positive view of the state of Israel. Israeli Christian Arabs. Let's go to the Muslims. The sedentary Muslims, right? The ones that in the villages. Okay? Along with, you have Bedouin. Here in the north, Bedouin are settling down. Here it's a different story. They have much more identity with the Arab world, and many have an identity with the Islamic uprisings. They do. So about half of them have a positive view of the state of Israel. We're talking about Israeli Muslims. About half do. The other half, not so much. Right? And then the Bedouin, it depends on what tribe and where. Look, I live in Eshhar, was mentioned, Arab al-Naim. Our next door neighbors voted 77% for the Likud, the Bedouin. Because they say they're the ones who helped them. And their loyalties to the tribe. And if anybody helps the elders of the tribe, that then help us, so that we're loyal to them. And by the way, it goes for a long time. They don't forget. And sometimes I have discussions with a lot of Arab and Bedouin neighbors. We have discussions, and I say, well, how did you remember that? It's from like 100 years ago. And they always laugh. They laugh at me because you guys remember from 2,000 years ago. You're going to deny us 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, Muhammad, 1,400 years. You go back 2,000 and 3,000 years? Come on. All right, so yeah, you're right. Okay? But they say, yeah, we remember. You did us a good term, we remember. You do us a bad term, they also remember for a long time. Okay? So it's a very mixed bag with the Bedouin. The point here is that the Arabic-speaking population is impacted by what goes on in the Arab world as much as what goes on in Israel. So, okay, where do they stand? They're in a lot better shape than the Arab world. I mentioned this to friends of mine. I said, listen, you're in a lot better shape than the Arab world. And what do they come back with? They're right. They say, Wait a minute, you're comparing Israel to the Arab world? I thought you guys always compare yourselves to the OECD, and to the United States, and to Europe. Suddenly when it comes to us, we get compared to the Arab world. I said, you know what, you're right. So where do they fall? Then as we say, between the two. In other words, the situation isn't as good as, let's say, the developed world, but it's much better than the Arab world. That's for sure. Also, when you pick up the statistics recently, starting from around 2010, the situation was getting a lot better very quickly. The problem is when you go into much of the research, you'll notice that it was done. It takes 2-3 years by the time it's published. Something published today is based on stats from 2014, 15, something like that. But if you go to the University of Haifa, 39% of the students are Arabic speaking. Right? 42% of the doctors in Rambam speak Arabic. They're Arab Jews, whatever. The head of the Nahariya Hospital, the Western Galilee Medical Center, Christian Arab. I think also high up in the administration in Sfat also there are some. Which one?
The director of the hospital.
Director of the hospital today is he's not Christian, right?
He's a Christian Arab.
In Sfat also?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the department heads.
Right. I know there are some Druze also. Yeah. Okay. And just to give an example, when my kid was injured in the army, okay, we had 2 orthopedic surgeons that took care of him. Both of them were Muslim Arabs. All right? They took care of him as well as anybody else. Okay? So, moving in. Also in the legal system, right? You need a lawyer here in the Galilee, and good 50% are Arabic speakers. Okay? So the feeling is one of integration in the economic level. The question is whether it's of integration and acceptance on the national level. In other words, I may be doing well professionally, but can I move in at Kfar Vradim? Can I buy a private, a lot here in Karmiel and build a house? In other words, am I accepted socially? Am I part of the Israeli, let's call it, mosaic? Or are we still sort of outside? Okay? They're very, very important because when you ask people, it's called relative deprivation. Right? That's usually what causes rebellions, revolutions, whatever else, and you generally need it on several levels before a population explodes. So on the economic level, yes, they're still somewhat behind, there's no doubt, because the village infrastructures and the schools there were not as good. Now they're getting much better. By the way, some of the Arabic-speaking schools, in the last few years, have been in the top 10 in Israel, or top 20. And they're getting Bagriot, but it's just the last few years. Right? It's interesting. The government is not exactly left-wing. Right? Likud. The conservatives. But Jabotinsky always said, the land of Israel is for the Jewish people. We have all the rights as a people to the land of Israel. But everybody else as individuals has rights in that state. Okay? And it appears, without really recognizing it, because we know what goes on TV and people making speeches in the Knesset, battering one another, and we know that many of the Arab Knesset members can be very radical in what they have to say against the state, and then the response that's given. What's going on locally is actually an economic development and a certain realization of professional goals. Once again, that's only a partial integration. Okay, now the Christians are the best at it. Their level of education is higher than the Jewish community, has been for a long time. Okay, Christians are very well educated. They're a minority within a minority. The Druze, the men, having served in the police, the army, the border police for 70 years, are up there with everybody else. Right? And their women, right, as of 2000, we noticed that the Druze and Muslim women are beginning also to catch up. In other words, how so? They're allowed to leave the village, right, and study, and after several years, even to stay on campus. It's a very conservative community. You didn't want your daughter who's unmarried, right, to be at a university campus in the evening, let's say, Okay, traditional, very conservative. But that's changed also. A lot of it's changed. We notice that there is now a difference, and the question is, where will it go, and how will the younger generation see itself in relation to the state? Because the younger generation calls themselves Palestinian Arabs with Israeli identity cards, or with Israeli citizenship. Now, many people thought that that was the only definition that had been given, because those were the people interviewed on TV. But the truth of the matter, it's not exactly like that. At the end of 2017, just to give you an idea, they asked Israeli Arabs, give us your identity. Right? And this is, the Pew reports, or the polls, right? And the Israel Democracy Institute, right? Those are two very, very well-known and serious institutions, which when they poll, you can be sure that they've got it, okay? They're not political, they're not trying to, well, they're always accused of being to the left, but that seems to be in mode nowadays, whatever it is. Okay, people who said that they were Arab as a first identity was 39%. Others who identified by religion first is 34%, meaning quite a few people are identifying first as Muslim and not as Arab. But then some are identifying, let's say, first as Christian or Druze. Then those who identify as Palestinian were 14%. And 10% identified first, I'm an Israeli. Now we can imagine most of that's coming from the Druze sector. Okay? Because they didn't go and break it down, each person and everything. But we know in general. Okay? Very interesting, because those saying I'm a Palestinian with Israeli citizenship is 14%. Yet that's what you hear about in the news all the time. Right? Because we know that's what will grab a headline. That's what gets everybody excited. And we also know that the joint list, which is the Arab list, or Shema Mishutefet, that they sort of play on that. And the mayors in the Arab towns have told them, you're presenting far too radical policy towards the state and the Jewish sector, which is the majority, and that's not good for us, because we're the ones who need the funds. Right? What was that? The mayor of Nazareth, Ali Salah. He had a tremendous fight with Ayman Uda, the head of the list, on camera, when Uda was being interviewed on the street in Nazareth, and attacking the government, and attacking Jewish nationalism, Zionism. And it just so happened that Salah pulled up in his car. And he got out and started yelling at him in front of the cameras, which was great. The news the reporter who covered it had a great story. And he said, interview me. I extend my hand in peace and friendship to all the Jews in the country, to all the communities. This is Nazareth, right? Home, right, of Jesus, and on and on. And we want everybody to come here, everybody to visit. All these major issues of nationalism and religion, whatever, leave them someplace else. We don't need this conflict here. Okay? So you'll find that on a lower level, people are much more moderate. And if you speak with them just individually, okay, they realize, I have a pretty good deal here. But yes, we do have a problem. There's a gap in our acceptance within the community. Right? Within Israel. And by the way, when there are laws like the nationality and loyalty bills and things like that, it does ruffle feathers. That's why many people say, just leave that stuff aside. But we have to get out there and yell, we're Zionists, this is a Jewish state. The reason is for that. The Arab population in the 60s and into the 70s, we had a large Russian immigration, and then in the 90s, again, large Russian immigration, so that proportionally their population would be between 12 and 15%. Since 2000, there's almost no Jewish immigration. And the only real growth in the Jewish population is in the ultra-Orthodox. Okay? And the Arab population continued to grow. It only leveled off in 2016-17, where the growth is the same as the Jewish population. But they're at 20 to 21%. So what happens? The majority starts to feel somewhat threatened. So we have to make it clear, we are the majority. But you don't have to say that if you're 90%. Okay? Look really carefully. Why is it being said? Because there's certain fears on our side. Hashashodas would say, a bit of anxiety. Okay, like, wait a minute. Critical mass here, as a minority, it could be a problem. Okay, in any case, so if we speak it there, and very important, these are the two populations that have grown the most in the last generation. Okay, now, we want to go and deal with the economy for a moment. technology. And the Israeli economic indicators. Right? And just a few interesting things. What's Israel's GDP? Anybody know? 2017, the GDP. $320 billion. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot. America's GDP is how much? 21 trillion or something? Okay, but that's America, right? Most people here from, Anglo countries, Britain's is 2.5 trillion, right? So, but look, how much is Egypt's GDP? 340 billion. 340 billion. We're 320 billion. They're 11 times larger than we are, population-wise. It shows what poverty they're in. Iran, our greatest adversary. What's theirs? Well, it's been collapsing recently. I have the stats from like 2016, 17. 394 billion. And ours 320 billion. And they have 80 million people. Okay? Let's take our nemesis up there towards the north, where we used to get those 4-day vacations, everything included, right? Called Kalul in Turkey, right? What's theirs? Also a country of 80 million. 860 billion. In other words, we're 40% of it, and we're 8.5 million people. And then just for other comparisons, Saudi Arabia is only 650 billion. In other words, double Israel, that's it. Saudi Arabia with all the oil. Jordan is 40, Syria, well, basically collapsed, and Russia is 1.3 trillion. In other words, we are somewhere between 25% and 30% our GDP as compared to Russia. In other words, we're an economic powerhouse. So it looks. Where does it come from? Why suddenly this? And the quick growth is Israeli innovation, high tech, right? People have read the book Startup Nation. It's a little outdated now, right? Because we know how fast things move. Started with a bit of the Yiddish code. We can go back to the 1920s and 30s, right? People often try to skip over the socialist movements of labor, but it's not true. They did in kibbutz and moshav, the labor union. Okay, there was deadwood socialism. We all know it. We get past it. We built a state on that. Then it fell apart. Okay, we got rid of it. No, it's true. They got rid of themselves. They realized it didn't work. Became social democrats. They were very innovative, right? Drip irrigation came out of kibbutz. Israel Aircraft Industries is established, under labor. And we can go on and on and on. Later on, right, you had a more capitalist approach. In the 1990s, especially when Netanyahu gets into power. All right, and basically the last 20 years have been dominated by the Likud and in the Likud by Benjamin Netanyahu. His ideals, he goes back to Jabotinsky's capitalist ideologies, right, how he sees the state. And with this, he brings in massive investment. But on the basis of what? Now, I don't know what people's political opinions are concerning Oslo, and I don't want to get into it. People say it failed, others say it still has a chance. But the truth of the matter is, people forget. There was an Oslo dividend in the 1990s. This tremendous opening towards the European Union, the United States and Canada, the rest of the world. They're going to make peace, and the dividend is we'll invest, and you can export to us. Plus, lo and behold, the Russian immigrants came. That was the great brain gain. Right? We've absorbed them since then. We had them from the 70s, about 165, 70,000. And then in the 1990s, we had about another 800,000 or so that arrived. Brain gain. It's true they weren't Zionists, the ones in the 90s, not particularly. Many of them intermarried. But this is what saved them. It made them re-identify as Jews, or identify as secular Jews, or just with the secular state, because they may not be halachically Jewish. But in any case, they wanted to succeed. I remember all the complaints in the 1990s, oh, the Russians will do this, they'll take our jobs. People were talking about factory jobs. Well, at the beginning they did, yeah, if someone was an electrical engineer, they ended up wiring, circuit boards. But then they got a job as an engineer, right? We had all this cheap labor of engineers. And that's the way you do it, capital exploitation, if we want a little bit of Marx here, okay? We exploited ourselves. That built the basis. Then, of course, you could build on that, like Netanyahu did. right? In other words, a more capitalist approach, which, by the way, the laborites also were in favor of. They just wanted more welfare states, not that they were against it. So remember, Oslo was labor, and Ehud Barak was in power for close to 2 years, from 99 to 2001. They didn't stop this, okay? And with that, once we got past the low-intensity conflict, or second intifada, 2004-5, you know, we had a dip. We even had lost the economy 1.9% in 2002. It shrank. But afterwards, springboarded out. How did Thomas Friedman put it from the New York Times? The difference between Israel and the rest of the Middle East is that once the war is over, we go back to building. And quicker, to make up for lost time. In other words, we turn inside domestically to make sure it works. Okay? While others are planning for the next war, yeah, we do that on site. That's not the main issue. Now we get back to making this place a good state to live in. Okay? Quality of life. By the way, on the happiness index, where's Israel in the world? Usually around 10, maybe a bit above a bit, but yeah. 11. Yeah, I think it was 11 last year. Yeah. Okay? The happiness index, take all the countries, 196 countries, we're all happy. Now, I don't know, I haven't seen too many drug dealers around here recently that would get that happy. Not in Karmiel, I hope, you know. But the truth of the matter is, what makes you, look, if you're satisfied, it means you have good social relations. It means people get along. We have all these ethnic communities coming in. It really is because the Zionist ideal is quite successful. That we do welcome the other. Yeah, we complain and they could do this and that, and they don't behave well, and they're refusing to learn Hebrew, and blah, 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 blah. We're all familiar with this. And in the army, right, you have all this stuff in particular, but that's where it all gets melted together. Okay? And the kids then come together. They're the ones who make it. I came here pretty young, so I feel, quite integrated. But often people come, they're 30s, 40s, they don't quite really integrate. People who come out of retirement, obviously it's not so easy, but it's the kids who'll do it. I just had a discussion with my son the other day, Tel Aviv, and he said to me, he goes, I figured it out. I said, what'd you figure out now? He's always figuring something out. So I said, what'd you figure out now? He goes, you know why this has all come together? This is not exactly a guy who's right wing, okay? I said, it's all come together. I said, how? He goes, because Zionism is like nationalism on steroids. I mean, the Jews, we did it all. So from Tanakh, in other words, religion, whether you really believe in your religious or not, doesn't matter. That is your basis, right? Hebrew scriptures, Tanakh, Old Testament, whatever. Plus, revived nationalism, an understanding of redemptionism, whether you believe it's from here or it's from here, us, Ruach HaUmah, or the spirit of the people. So it doesn't matter. Look at what is that. Nobody else did this. Unbelievable. With all of our divisions and arguing with the ultra-Orthodox and secular and right and left and issues of development or / settlements in the West Bank, which we'll get to in a moment, or Judea and Samaria. Okay? But in any case, right, there's sort of this feeling of achva, right, of people together, an achdut. Right? So, just a bit more, just a couple other stats on the economy. All right, 3.8 million employed, an unemployment rate of 3.9% at the moment. Now, that also includes partial employment. We know that statistics, you remember what Mark Twain said? There are 3 things I really hate: lies, damn lies, and statistics. Okay, but still, it's there, and we know people are employed. Okay? We have $60 billion in export. What's the engine for this whole thing? It's high-tech and what's called middle to high-tech. 75% of the export, something like 45 billion. Okay, and these are gross numbers because there's always, several stats how you figure it out of 60 billion. And of course, in the usual way that we do things in this country, imports are 66 billion. So we got 6 billion missing there, right? 60 billion exports, 6 billion imports. Where do we get the other 6 from? Well, some people are invested, some people bring money over, some people have others helping them that may not live here, but you know where it really comes from? We all know, and nobody really likes to talk about it, but it's on the news every once in a while, that 20 to 25% of the Israeli economy is off the books. It's off the books. It's off the books. In other words, nobody reports it. It just happens. Okay, it's a miracle. Right? What do they say? Israel doesn't need miracles, we depend on them. Okay. In any case, but we're not the only ones. Look, this is the Middle East. You know all those other stats I gave you about GDPs? They also have 25% off the books, if not more. Greece has something like 35% off the books. And then Angela Merkel discovered it, right? You know, the European Union wasn't too thrilled. But in Italy also said, it's the Middle East, the Mediterranean. But in any case, that's where it is. They speak about the poverty. Remember, you know, every year, I think it's in November when they release the statistics on poverty in the country. 20% of Israelis are below the poverty line. That's what they say. It didn't make sense. Some of the economists also took a sociology course. And what do they realize? Put the numbers aside. Should this place have exploded if 20% are below the poverty line? So then, the head of Bituach Leumi, right? The National Insurance Institute. At the time, I forgot her name. She retired a few years ago. She said, I'm going to do something else. I'm not going to ask what your income is. We're going to do a survey on what your expenditures are. And what was discovered? That only 12% were below the poverty line. So they're getting it someplace. Now, some of them, you know, get help from their communities. Others from, say, relatives living in the Golden Medina. That's America. Others, yeah, they got a side job, and okay, so that's all. We won't go any further. But this is it. And we know that when they speak of such things as poverty, and by the way, especially in the Arabic-speaking community, we know a lot of people that they have a job, and they also work elsewhere, whatever. Okay? But we take the whole country. So in that case, the situation is actually better than the official statistics. And I always tell people, be really careful with those statistics. It often makes things look a little worse than they are. Take a look at what's around you. You have eyes, take a look. Speak to people. They tell you that this or that town is quite poor, drive through. Or when you're there, take a look. Right? Is it really like that? Is it that bad? If they say it's really poor, most likely they're not well off. Okay? And just a couple of other things. The state budget this year is $128 billion. And the debt, state debt, is less than 60% of the GDP. You know, in America, it's almost the same. Right? There's a whole problem there of servicing the debt. And then we have foreign currency reserves of $100 billion. And so it all looks really good. But it isn't as good as we would think. Because the economy sits on a narrow basis of technology. And we're short at least 10,000 engineers. We have to import them. There are people working in engineering firms or whatever, high tech, from abroad. I teach at the Technion. I come across people that are getting jobs in Haifa. They're from India. Okay? Yeah, there's a problem. And that's why the whole thing, the press, they're doing it to learn more math, to learn more science, because they realize this is the future. We are an R&D center, and that's what started in the 90s. That was the ideal, the economic ideal. Behind those also we were dealing in Oslo. Or if you read what Shimon Peres writes, he said, what are we going to do? Heavy industry? We'll wreck the place. Right? Pollution and all that. Light industry? Hey, you know what? They'll do it a lot cheaper out in the Far East. Can't do it. R&D for Europe, for North America, for China, for India. The R&D center of the world. That's the idea. But we're short. They say we're not able to make up that shortfall. Which I'll get to in a moment. How to make up that shortfall. Okay? So how do we maintain all of this? Where are the two groups? Here and here. The ultra-Orthodox, there's a whole discussion of getting them into technology industries. Okay? Computer sciences, engineering, things of that nature, and Israeli Arabs. Christians not a problem. Apparently you're not really the Jews either. Many of the Muslims are moving there. But the questions are, there are a lot of security industries here. They may have all the qualifications, but it's a matter of trust. And that's, once again, the integration into the society. Can you trust each other? Okay? This is one of the issues. And by the way, we know there are Muslims who serve in the army today, much more than previously. Okay? But these are the two groups they're looking at, saying, listen, if it's not going to be them, then who? There's no great reservoir for immigration. People are not flocking here from New York and Toronto. They're just not. Okay? So, we got to this. Now, the security issues I'll do in 15 minutes, because usually when I speak, that's the thing you start with and you never get done with it. Okay? So I want to do domestic first. I think it's really important that we take a look at ourselves domestically, because we're constantly dealing, because that's what the news deals with, Israel and the Palestinians and Iran and Hezbollah and blah, blah, blah. Fine. How much can you deal with it? 400, 500 pages worth. Yeah. Okay? Wrote about it, but then I realized, okay, it's important, but we live here domestically. Let's take a look. What's the issue with the Palestinians? Question. Can we make peace with the Palestinians?
No.
Okay, next topic. Okay, look. How should I put this? Well, okay. A lot of people here, we know each other pretty well, just on our political perspectives and things like that. I've always felt that we really need to come to conflict resolution. If you don't really have a partner, it's a problem. The question is, what do you do in the meantime? What do you do in the meantime? Okay? And in the meantime, obviously, we also have our internal issues, and I should have marked it here as well, Palestinians, and then Judea, Samaria, or what's often called the West Bank. The ideology that's the leading ideology in the country at the moment, if we're speaking about land of Israel, right? We're coming out of Gush Emunim, the greater, or actually predated, greater land of Israel movement. And the question comes up, one or two state solution, and what do you do about it? And here starts being some of our major challenges, or even pitfalls. Okay? Because, look, as we said, the demographics are about 21% Arabic speakers. By the way, there's 4% of the population that identifies as Jewish that really, or identifies with Israeli culture, but is not Jewish at all, right, coming out of Eastern Europe. So the Jewish population is about 75%. All right? Keep that in mind as well. But here, so what do you do? Okay? And this becomes a great ideological debate. Will there be a repartition of the land of Israel with some sort of Palestinian entity? Now we know there's a Palestinian Authority set up under Oslo. Have they been successful? Not particularly. Are they more successful than Gaza? By far. Gaza broke off from them in 2007 with the overthrow by Hamas. Right? And the Palestinians, right? Will they engage, and why aren't they? Okay? Many of them say, until you don't stop settlements, we're not going to engage. But they know, and if you read the Oslo Accords, that's supposed to be the final discussion in the permanent status agreement. Okay? Yet, even when there was a settlement freeze by Netanyahu, he didn't stop the freeze. There was no freeze in Jerusalem, but by Netanyahu, I think it was 2010, when Obama was president. For 10 months, there was a freeze. They didn't engage until the 10th month. And by then it was far too late. Okay? And these are existential questions. Because if we slide into a one-state solution, then we're going to have to ask lots of questions about our identity. And does everybody there have citizenship? If you annex everything, areas A and B included, which make up 40% of Judea, Samaria / the West Bank. You'll have a population. People often start this silly argument, as far as I'm concerned. Will still be a majority. The Jews will be between 52 and 55%, and the Arabs will be a minority. People, that's a binational state. It means you have to support a religious Islamic school system, just like you support an ultra-Orthodox school system here. So they're going to study certain things in the Quran, the Hadiths, and in the ESRA, which is the history of the life of Muhammad. Talk about superiority, talk about jihad, right? The attitudes towards, like the rest of us here won't be very good. You want to pay for that? No, not exactly, I didn't think so. No, so it brings up questions that aren't just related to the statistics, all right? But what type of society will we have? Because for sure, everything will go to the Supreme Court. We're not being funded on the same level as, let's say, the Jewish sector. And of course, they'll say, well, you aren't. Okay, yes, you deserve this or that. Or, I'll give you something that you're not really, a lot of people really won't like. You take the Arab, let's say, in such a situation, all right, I'm projecting forward. I'm not looking at it in a very positive light, such a thing. There are those who say it'll all work out. I don't know how. But you could have certain ultra-Orthodox parties that are not particularly Zionist that could say, listen, with the Arab parties, they're going to give us a better deal for what we want, right? From projecting that something like this would happen. You may find that traditional Zionist parties are in the opposition. Okay? I don't want to, don't say left dating, I don't want to, terrify anybody with anything. I'm saying that you have to think these things through. In other words, it's one thing to say it's an ideal, but do you have the ability to do it, and where does it lead you to? On the other hand, two-state solution, that's got to be a demilitarized or non-militarized Palestinian entity. And right now we know that it's 50% or a bit less, right, that support anything like that on the Palestinian side, right? And I would say even a two-state solution is not supported. Certainly non-militarized, it's much, much less. And many people here in Israel already, less than 50%, trust it. Because they say they'll get weapons in any case. So what do? There was a book put out just recently called Milkut 67. In other words, the Catch 67. In other words, with the 67 war, we had all these directions to go in. And every time you went in one direction, there was a catch. And if you went exactly in the other direction, there was also a catch. Right? That's the difference. One, two-state solution. Security, yes, no. All right? And what had been up to recently, and there are those who claim that the birth rate is slow, I claim, from what I understand, it's still plenty high. Okay? That their population has grown quite a bit. Remember, Six-Day War, West Bank and Gaza together was 900,000 people. Today, how many are there altogether? Including East Jerusalem? We're talking of close to 5 million. I don't buy there are 2 million in Gaza. I think it's about 1.7. Okay? Go to the West Bank, they call the West Bank 2.7, 2.8, 300,000 in Jerusalem, you're closing in. Okay? So the question is how there can be an economic peace. Netanyahu speaks about it. Get them involved also. Technology and development, they won't want to go to war, but where's the national identity once again? What flag are you under? You want to get the Jordanians involved. If you were Jordanian, would you want to get involved? Take over the West Bank? Anybody want to do that?
They said they would.
Yeah, okay. And then I know other people have told me that how do you handle the problem in Gaza? Well, get the Egyptians to take it over. Now, if you're an Egyptian, you want to go into Gaza? Okay. So let's say we made peace, let the Yids bust their heads. Right? The Jews will bust their heads. They got the peace from us, we're on the other side of the border. And by the way, those two countries have plenty of problems. Okay. That's here. And then Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, jihadism, all this. The Middle East, it's a new Middle East. It's true. It's not exactly the one that was envisioned by Shimon Peres. Okay? It became jihadi. It then exploded and imploded. Secular Arab nationalism took a 44-ounce baseball bat into the head. In other words, it got clobbered. Secular Arab nationalism will survive only in what's called a Praetorian state. In other words, a state that's militarized. If the army runs, even if they put on, they get out of the army, they put on suits and ties. Okay? That's a Sisi. That was Mubarak. If you have free elections there, you saw what happened in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood was freely elected with, what was it, 49% of the vote? Who came in second? The Salafists, in other words, the jihadists, the pro-Al-Qaeda bunch, who were very close to the Islamic State bunch, they got 25%. The elections of 2011, 2012, right? So we want to be good and democratic, guess what we get? All right, now, I don't know if it would quite go that far today. They probably would lose a bit of support because they see what goes on in the Arab world, but still they'd have a majority, right? Jordan is not stable. Syria does not really exist as a country. It's being put together, back together, with Elmer's glue made in Moscow. Right? That's what they're trying to do. But you know how that will fall apart, because we just spoke about the Russian GDP, right? And that's basically concentrated in the hands of maybe 10-15% of the population. You know, Russia doesn't really have much of a navy anymore. They're one of their major battleships broke down in the Mediterranean. The Americans have to tow it, help them out. That was a year or two ago, maybe 3 by now. Okay, in other words, they're projecting a certain amount of power. They want their port at Latakia. They want it all. Latakia, Tarsus, that area, right? They want their ports. They can end the war, but they can't rebuild Syria. No. Who else is in Syria? The Iranians. How are they doing? Donald understood very well what had to be done. Talking about Mr. Trump. Yeah? Whether you like him or not, he understood this agreement. Better to get rid of it than have such an agreement that will allow for 10 years where they develop conventional abilities. Okay? Now, there were different times when in Israel we thought to bomb their sites. All the heads of the security services said, don't do it, you'll just unite the Iranian people. It's got to come with international pressure, or if you're going to do that, you need an international coalition to bomb them, to take them on. We can't do it on ourselves, on our own. Because you unify the Iranian population. By the way, our friends in Iran, they're plenty that quite still friendly to Israel. We have contact. They say, don't do it, because even we as Iranians, we can't take that you took such action. But the economic pressure, or if it was in the entire West, which wasn't going to happen, because Europe was not going to get involved. Okay? So we were stuck. Until it was decided to pull the plug on an agreement that really just enhanced their abilities to get involved in the war in Yemen, to threaten the Saudis, right? To project power into Iraq, Syria, right? And today we saw it, we see what's happening. Their economy is tanking, even if this hadn't happened, right? The cancellation of the agreement. Because the monies are basically misappropriated. It wasn't done for domestic. People have great expectations when you sign the agreement. It's the expectation gap, right? We spoke about relative deprivation. You have an expectation gap, and you expect, and you're not getting what should be there, so you believe the other side, whoever it is taking from you. And therefore, there are a lot of demonstrations, there have been riots, and the Persian population in Iran is about 50%. The minorities have grown, the Arabs, as well as other minorities, the Kurds, the Azeris, all right? They're not so happy living in Iran. The Azeris would like to be part of Azerbaijan. They're doing much better. The Kurds, we know, always there are issues of them wanting to break off. And then there are other groups. Okay? Now, so Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas. Iran supports Hezbollah. Hezbollah is the most powerful group in Lebanon. But without Iranian support, they'll sink. They expect help from Iran always. And they have allies. There are Christians who have even joined them. And others. You know, hadn't joined them before, because you have to join the strongest party in Lebanon. But if Iran can't support them anymore, and they're weakened, there are a lot of people waiting around the corner. It's like, okay, I'm your friend now. Why? Because you were a lot stronger than me. I couldn't do anything. But they're waiting. Remember, people have long memories. The Middle East for sure. Right? It's not just a real estate deal, like line this land, your land, right? There are other things involved. What I call sacred memories. Sacred lands, also, right? And sacred beliefs. Okay? So Hezbollah may be in Syria. I mean, they are. They're doing Iran's work for them. They're facing a crisis. Not there yet. They'll be facing it. Hamas and jihadism, this is Sunni, right? This is Shiite. But the Iranians are supporting Hamas, and the jihadism goes on in the Gaza Strip. It's true, there's an Islamic State group there also. Hamas is Sunni. But Hamas will take aid from anybody they can get. Wherever they can get it. Because the Islamic State is breathing down their necks. You have operatives there. So they get aid, and they're propped up by two groups. Hamas. Well, actually three. The Turks are competing with the Iranians to see who has the greatest influence. And that's been going on for a while. Hamas runs its own foreign policy. And then there's a third factor that doesn't want them overthrown, wants them weakened but strong enough to control Gaza. Who's that? Us. We, Israel, support Hamas now. What option do we have? We don't want anybody more radical. We'd like the moderates who talk of what's called hudna or ceasefire or whatever, Islamic ceasefire, meaning that you can reload and restart later on. But in the meantime, that they would hold it down. Okay? So it's a very tricky game. And the big question comes, what happens if Iran collapses? Let's ask ourselves that, because that's what we all want, right? We want the Iranians to collapse. Okay. You may find pandemonium in Lebanon. Many people expect Lebanon to collapse. With all the pressures, it didn't. Because Iran and Hezbollah was very strong through Iranian support. But what happens if the Iranians are out? Good. Hey, you had a 15-year civil war in Lebanon. What about all the Pleitim? The refugees? Jordan, Lebanon, right? These places also, the strain is getting to them. Iran collapses, shatters in part. Look, the idea was to glue it back together quickly with some sort of government that the West could work with. But if you don't, we always thought instability, on the bad guys, like the other side, is a good thing. You remember how worried the Americans suddenly got when the Soviet Union collapsed? Like, where did the nuclear weapons go? Well, if Iran has its own project, what could happen there? Right? We just don't know. Okay? So you want some sort of orderly, transfer of power. And if not that, then whatever happens, quick and get it over with and get back to some sort of stability. Okay? So built in here, right, Israel winning, quote, outright with the Palestinians brings up the question, if you have a one-state solution, maybe you won the war, but you may lose the future, right? A lot of people bring that up as a question. And here, Iran could go under, but what happens when there's nobody in control? Right? Look, maybe it would just be that the other side, moderates, get the power and win. But remember something, if the moderates in the Arab Sunni world win, they're going to say, okay, now we would like to know where is the conclusion of the conflict with the Palestinians. We're all on the same side here. We were all helping each other. So we worked together, got rid of that. Okay, what's next? We're going to have to make a decision. Right? And it may have to be unilateral, what's done with the Palestinians. It's been discussed before. Many people think that wouldn't be such a great idea. But it may have to be reconsidered. Right? Right? I'm throwing these out. We don't know what the future holds. Right? Just think of it. You never really know, and in the Middle East, for sure you don't. Okay? Because we always know where factors are involved. We do. We're always aware of the factors. We just don't know with those variables, is it 1A, 2A, or 7A? And is it 1B, or 4B, or half B? Because you may have 10 factors, but what are the weights of each one? Because you do know, in retrospect, we should have put more weight on that or this. Okay? That's where your mistakes are. Not that you didn't pay attention at all. Okay? So, we'll just wrap up by saying, yes, Israel's situation is quite good at the moment. But we really do need to project ahead, integrating here, right? Keeping the technological advancements, development, cutting edge. How do we handle the Palestinians to remain a Jewish and democratic state? Right? This comes from many people saying that. Others would say that may not be so important. There are people in a growing number who say that, but in any case, I'll present it as such. And then here, okay, this at one point or another will come to the end. How will the Middle East look? And if it's really shattered, is that really a good thing for us?